Okay, so now let's move on to the addition game view. So I'm going to command click on addition game view, jump to definition. And I'm also going to close a lot of the other tabs. We don't need just unnecessary distractions. Yeah, and here we are, addition game view. Now, I want access to the view model. So I'm going to create a state object, private var, and I can call this addition game view model. I usually do this, but sometimes it's just shorter to write VM or add VM or game VM. So maybe we'll just change this to game view model. And let's set that equal to addition game view model. Okay, great. And now let's take this text and let's embed it in a VStack. And right below the text, I'm going to put a spacer to push the code up. I could add some padding, but what I really want to do is, instead of addition game view, I want us to display the scores and lives and level. So let's create a new view. And let's make sure we're in the addition game view folder too. So let's create a new view. And I'm going to call this ScoreLivesView. And let's see what we need here. So I want us to have the score. So let score be an integer. I want us to have lives. So the lives will be an integer. I want there to be a max number of lives, say 3. And I want us to have the level. Okay. Now this should be in a row. So, and Xcode is quite upset, so let's take care of this and do Control Option Command F. For the score, let's just have 22, say the lives 2, max lives 3, and level 23. Okay? Or maybe level 7, for instance. Whatever. Okay. Now, I want this to be in a row, so let's take this text over here, and let's embed it in an H stack. Now, instead of hello world, let's have score. And after that, let's have some text that says level. And finally, let's have some text that says lives. Now I'm going to put a spacer in between each of these. Spacer. And I'm going to add some padding to the H stack. And sometimes I would remove that padding and apply the padding in the parent view. It just depends. Okay, now the preview is slowly updating. It's taking a little bit time, but we're not worried about that. Everything should be fine. Okay, so we have score, level, lives. So we have the general structure that we want. Now let's just make it look a little bit nicer. So for the score, I'm actually going to embed this in a VStack. And we'll have score, and underneath the score, I'm going to have the actual value of score. So I'm using string interpolation. And I want the font to be .headline, the font weight to be .bold, and the foreground color to be that white. Now let's select one of our backgrounds in the preview. So I'm going down to the preview. Let's embed the ScoreLivesView within a Z-stack. And I want to use the game background. So game background view. Okay, that's already looking a little bit better. Next, let's go to level. And I'm actually just going to duplicate all this. I'm going to duplicate all this, and let's replace this with level, remove this text over here, and have level. And finally, we want to have the lives. Now, notice this is kind of the same code twice. So I think we should turn this into a view. Okay, so we can turn this into a view. So let's say Command N, SwiftUI view, and so let's call this title value view. Title value view. I'll just copy this. Now I want us to have a name or a title, which will be of type string. And oops, so let's replace this with title. And I want us to have a value which is of type integer. So instead of score, we'll have value. And down here, we should just have something, right? So for the title, let's have like score. And for the value, say 7. And we won't really be able to see it because we should embed this in a background that's not white, right? For instance, I could do adding game view, oops, not excuse me, game background view. Great. So we have this title value view, and now let's go back to the previous view, and now I can just simplify the code. So title value view, you know, I always want to simplify things. So score, and this value is over here, and I can just remove all of this code, and now the code is much more readable, and I can do the same thing for the level, right? So instead of level, and let's change the variable, right? This to score. Then things look good. The only thing we need to do is create something called LivesView, which will be over here. So LivesView, we want to display our cool little creatures. So let's create yet a new SwiftUI view. And I'm going to call this LivesView. Now for the LivesView, trying to decide if this is already too much for a video. I think this is fine. We're still okay. I just don't want to overdo it. So let image. So we'll have an image name of type string. We'll have a number of lives, which will be an integer. Wait, I have a little mistake here. I didn't press enter. My bad. Let's have the dimension equal to 30. This will be a constant. Maybe we'll change it later. Let max lives also be an integer. So the way I'm designing this game is that there's probably going to be an upper bound on the number of lives, but maybe not. Okay, now missing argument for parameters. So let's do Control Option Command F. And we have image name, num lives, max lives. And actually, let's change the image name to the creature type because it's going to be a creature. So that means that we have dot creature 0, for instance, num lives 2, max lives 3. And now let's just get into this. So we're going to have creatures in a row. So let's first of all start with image. Now image name is of type creatures and we need a string. So I'm going to take the raw value. Now that looks pretty angry. I don't think I want something so angry. Let's try creature 1. Wait, let's just do something resizable. Right, this is just a little bit hard to review. So resizable, scale to fit, and let's do frame, width, height. Oops, not 30. I want dim, and set the alignment. Now that's way too small to see. It'll be useful during the game, but let's actually make it a little bit bigger now so I can actually see. Okay, that looks pretty cool. Let's try another creature. I like that creature. He's also pretty cute. That's cool. I actually like creature 4. We don't want to cry, and there is no creature 6. So this is a really tough decision. No. Okay, I'll leave it at that. It's kind of shy. I'm trying to decide between creature 1, which looks so awesome, and creature 4. Let's go with creature 1. I think that's pretty cute, and we can change that later if we want to. Now I'm going to really change the size. Let's say change it down to 50, although I'm pretty sure I want 30. Okay, that looks nice. And I want several creatures, so in a row. So I probably want an 8 stack. And let's repeat the image. So let's repeat. And let's go from 0 to max lives. And we're going to have to add id \self. Because we want to have some way to differentiate the values we're indexing through. And instead of item, I want I. And now we have 3 of these cute creatures, right? But you see, there's only two alive, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let opacity, which is a CG float, equal to the following. So if I is greater or equal than num lives, then the opacity should be 0. Otherwise, it should be 1. Okay? So once we exceed the number of lives, we're going to use opacity 0. So now let's apply the opacity to the image. And that's amazing. Now I could have done this differently, right? I could have removed the opacity, and instead of indexing up to max lives, I could do up to num lives. But then the images would shift, and I want them all aligned, max live, as if there were max lives there. And also this is going to fade out when we actually use this in practice. So great, now we're in really great shape. And now what we can do is go back. Well, first of all, let's copy this. So ScoreLivesView. I'm going to copy the preview code. And let's go back to ScoreLivesView. I'm going to replace this text over here. But instead of the number 2, I want lives. And instead of the number 3, I want max lives. And the creature is too big, okay, in my opinion. And we can tweak this later. So I'm going to go back to ScoreLivesView and change the dimension to 30. And now I'll go back to ScoreLivesView. And it would have been nice if I would have pinned the view. So that's already looking quite nice. And now I'm going to go down to the preview. Let's copy ScoreLivesView. And now I'm going to go to the parent. Well, who's the parent? The parent is the addition game view. Right, so let's go to the addition game view and replace this text with ScoreLivesView, score 22, which doesn't make sense, lives 2, which doesn't make sense, max lives 3, which might make sense, and level 7. why do I say it doesn't make sense? Because we want to actually use the view model, right? We don't want these, arbitrary values. So I'm going to use the view model, right? So let's take GameVM dot score. GameVM dot GameModel.lives. Actually, we could add a computed property to the view model, so I'll just do lives. But yeah, max lives, let's use 3. And finally, down here, GameViewModel dot, I don't think I have access to level. I do not. GameModel.level. Okay, that's pretty clean. So we have that part of our code. Okay, so in the next video, we'll start adding the problem, the actual math problem, and we'll be adding a solutions view. So have an amazing day and see you next time.